Chords implicate keys. So depending on which key I'm playing in, it will either be a major chord or a minor chord. Oftentimes we might find ourselves having to listen to a song in order to learn it, only to default to the same old humdrum chords we've been playing for years. So what is it that we need to know that will get us beyond just knowing whether or not a song is in a major key or a minor key? Let's discuss. I'm Chris Moses, and this is Gospel Progressions University, where I'm here to equip you as a church musician. If you haven't yet, you need to go check out gospelprogressionsuniversity.com/gospel keys pro. You can go download my free guide. It's called What Do Pro Musicians Know That You Don't? It doesn't matter if you're at the very beginning stage or you're all the way at the end, because every week I release lessons that I'm sure you will find beneficial and life-changing for your music and for your ministry. Now, when we take a look at chords and when we're looking at movement of different chords versus major versus minor, what we do have are basically 7 options, right? I want to say that in America, in the West, we have a 12 tone equal temperament scale, a 12 tech. Now, the thing is with the equal temperament, 12 tone equal temperament, or 12 key scale, is that there are only 7 chords essentially. So when you have one chord, it's only going to be 1 out of 7, although we have 12 tones or 12 keys. Whenever we're looking at the major scale, or what's also known as the Greek name, the Ionian scale, we're looking at 6 chords, and we have an extra one that would be 7, but we're going to look at the 6. And so it's either going to be 3 major chords or 3 minor chords. So, and the last one will be, of course, a diminished. And that's pretty much it. Every other chord after that is going to be derived from or some kind of transmutation of any one of those chords in that set of chords. So, for example, if we're looking at the B flat chord, all right, or the key of B flat rather, the first chord is going to be major. So B flat, these are all your notes in B flat, major, 7-tone scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So if we took the very first chord, a very first note, it would correspond to a number using the natural number system. We have 1, the second one is 2, third one is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1 again. Now, the chords that correspond to that also correspond to the number as well. So your first chord, the 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor, 7 is diminished, and of course back to the 1. So out of all of those, you're going to have 3 chords major, 3 chords minor. So the 3 chords that are major are either going to be the first chord, they're going to either be the 4th chord or the 5th chord. The minor chords are going to be chord number 2, chord number 3, or chord number 6 every time. That's with the major scale. So when we approach the major scale, and if we're sticking in that scale and we're looking to make, say, B flat major our key center or the tonic or the main tonality, most of our chord progressions are going to revolve or resolve to that. So for example, we know that the 3rd interval plays a role of major importance, and no pun intended, because this gives us the chord quality or the type of chord that we're going to play. Either going to play a major chord, dominant 7th chord, or a minor 7th chord. Or if we just did a triad, it would be major or minor. But the 3rd is the catalyst that pushes the chord to exactly what we're trying to do with it. It gives us the chord quality. But if we played now in, say, a different key, say if we did like D flat Ionian or D flat major, and we did the 6th mode of that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th. All right, 6th mode, or the 6th inversion of the scale, we would start at B flat, and that would be B flat Ionian. Oh, I'm sorry, B flat Aeolian. So B flat. This is also known as the B flat, or the in this case it would be B flat natural, or the natural minor scale. So if we took those chords just like we did with our B flat major, we're gonna have minor 1, okay. Diminished is going to be the 2 chord, where it was the 7 chord before in our B flat major. But in this case, it's 2 is diminished, 3 is major. Now, and then we have 4 is minor, 5 is minor, 6 is major, 7 is major, and then back to the 1 again. But now we know that if we're taking either a major chord or a minor chord, and we're progressing towards any one of those chords, it would largely dictate the key that we're in. So again, it's going to be 1 out of 7. If it's a major or minor chord, of course, if it's a diminished chord, it's going to be the 7th in every case. But we're looking at the cases where we actually resolve, because typically when we play, we're not resolving to a diminished chord. Diminished chords set up or a part of the actual tension that we set up to actually have a resolution to either a minor tonic or a minor resolution, or a major tonic or a major resolution. So in all actuality, 6 chords are just all we need, the 3 major or the 3 minor. And anything in between are going to be chords that are altered. That's going to take us to that place. So for example, if I wanted now to get to my major chord for B flat, right? For example, typically in jazz and gospel, we're going to do what's called a 2-5-1 chord progression. So we would take the second note, which would be 1, 2, give us a minor. So minor 2, and then we go to the 5, which is major, and then we go back to the 1, which is major. Of course, you may hear that and you say, well, this is something that I play all the time. It's very basic and very just vanilla sounding, right? Because we're playing the chords diatonically. And diatonic just means every note within the major scale, within the key itself, and not leaving it. There's no B's, there's no A flat, there's no D flat, nothing like that. In this particular case, in the key of B flat, we're just playing just the notes that belong to that Ionian scale or major scale. So moving forward now with this, what we would actually do to alter something like this, in order to change this, it's like you would change your language. Like, for example, if you wanted to say something in Spanish or Italian, you obviously can't say it in English. And if you were to mix the two, well, the person would have to know English if you were going to say it in English and Spanish, or they'd have to know 3 languages for you to communicate if you were going to do English, Spanish, and Italian. And in this case, with every scale that you learn, you're actually learning a new subset of languages per se. For instance, more than likely, you've learned the major scale, and you may have learned some chords that may go along with the major scale, or may get you to go outside and play notes that are non-diatonic. When I say outside of the key itself, to actually get to the destination that you're going to go to, either resolving to a major or to a minor. That's it. But why? Why does that work? And so do you have to memorize a whole bunch of chord progressions? And this is the thing, this is the problem that so many people have. You don't have to memorize a whole series of chord progressions. And in fact, there's a much simpler way to actually approach it. And so if you can commit yourself just to learning another scale or 2 outside of just the Ionian or the major scale, it will catapult your playing. Now, let's take a look at that. So when we look at the major scale, we know B flat major, all right, are going to be these notes here. So we know that the 1 is major, okay, and the 4 is major, and 5 is major. 4 and 5 in B flat, or any key. That's why we use the numbers, because they correspond to all 12 keys. And you're going to have your minor 2, minor 3, and minor 6. So with that in mind, when we're looking at major and minor, we're resolving. If we're resolving to that tonic minor or the tonic major, tonic meaning the tonal center, we can do a series of things. However, we have to know exactly where they are first, because, for instance, I could resolve to a B flat major, and is it a 1, is it a 4, or is it a 5? It depends on where I'm going. If I wanted to resolve to a B flat minor, I'm playing it inverted, is it going to be a 2? Is it going to be a 3? Or is it going to be a 6? Well, that largely depends on what key I'm playing it in. But I can actually change that whole approach if I were to change the scales that I'm looking at, and the scale tones that I'm actually using. And that's what I'm going to talk about. When we change our scale, we can change our chords. It will greatly affect, even if we change one note. So for example, if we took B flat major as we know it, right? What if we did this? What if we took B flat major and said, okay, instead of playing these notes here, we said we'll take 1, 2, and the 3rd note. Remember, I said the 3rd gives it the quality. It's either going to be major or minor. So in this case, we're just going to go to the second option that we have. We're going to make it minor. So the entire scale now is still going to be the same, except for that one note, which is going to be the D, making it D flat, giving us an entirely different scale. It may or may not sound familiar to you, but when we give it context, you'll understand what I'm saying better. So this here is a minor scale. It's known as the B flat melodic minor. And it's like this in jazz and gospel, because in classical, there's a one set of notes ascending the scale, and you change that same set of notes descending the scale. But that's beyond the scope of this. But for this particular style we're looking at, it's going to be the same set of notes going up and the same set of notes coming back down and descending. Now, when we take that now, we are no longer going to have the first chord as a major and the second chord as, well, the second chord will be a minor in this case, but the third chord will change. All right, it will no longer be a minor. We're going to change that into something else because the D doesn't belong to that scale. It's non-diatonic, so we won't play it. So we're going to have this chord here, D flat, F, and E. All right, so we're going to have here, it's going to be known as a D flat augmented chord. The chord is changed. But before we get into all the chord tones of that, we're not necessarily using this as we would use a scale like we play 1 minor, 2 minor, 3 augmented. The way we look at this now is we'll look at it not just scale wise, but we're going to look at it how it would help us with the harmony. Okay, because just learning scale tones like you would with a major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's good to know. You want to memorize that, and even with that particular scale, but we're locking ourselves in if this is what we think. This is the only place that we can actually use it. Because bear in mind, when I said that we're going to progress, we're either going to progress to one of 3 major chords or one of 3 minor chords. So if we just think it's okay, well, 1 is the minor, and this is what I have, and 2 is minor, 3 is augmented, it locks us into a pattern of thinking where we have to stay on these notes, and this is all that we have. So again, when we're looking at this, we know our first chord is minor. So that clues us into how we can use this. We can say, well, when we resolve, we can use this scale to come up with chords to resolve to either a minor 2, a minor 3, or a minor 6. Conversely, we could do the same thing with the major scale, okay? But we'd have to use a different scale. And there are many scales to learn, but the most helpful ones, and I will tell you this hands down, you heard it from me, 1st or 50th, it's the melodic minor scale. If you're gonna play gospel music, get that scale in every single key under your belt. You will never have a problem again learning chords and learning how to play gospel music. I promise you that, I can guarantee that. So now, and the diminished scale, and we're going to talk about that. And I do talk about the diminished scale in this video here, and in another video. I'll leave those links in the description. I'll leave a tag up here. Now, looking at this, we have the major scale under our belt. Yay, this is what we know. And now we have the melodic minor scale under our belt. And we also know the natural minor or the Aeolian scale. Okay, now, if you notice with the minor, though, when we look at the natural minor versus the melodic minor, you're going to have a change. It starts off dark, like how minor sounds in our culture. This is dark, then it gets light again, and dark, and then light. So there's a purpose for that, because if you help you to remember it, the first 4 notes are minor, okay, and the last 4 notes are going to be going towards the majors and a resolved major. So now, when we take a look at this, we know that the tonic or the tonal center for the melodic minor is a minor chord. So now, armed with that knowledge, we can say that we can make it either 2 chord, a 3 chord, as I said, or a 6 chord. With the major key tonality, what are we going to do with that? So let's take a look. We're going to get back to that melodic minor. Keep that in mind. Let's take a look at what we can do with the major scale. When we're looking at harmonies now, and what works with what, and what things actually match, we can't take the major scale and necessarily mix it with the melodic minor, because largely this third is going to affect the quality of the first chord. So when we resolve in a major key, we don't resolve minor and then minor and minor 6, diminished, and then we're not resolving here because this is outside of the key diatonically. However, we need to find scale tones that actually match, or match either most of the notes or are going to have a nice harmony to go along with it. Remember, we're going to resolve. We can use B flat as our key or our tonal center, or B flat minor as our tonal center. However, we need to take what we have now, as far as what we know, and match the notes. That's what music is about. We need to have some kind of harmonic structure and some kind of melodic line to create the tension and to create the release to make it sound musical. However, we don't have a match with the melodic minor scale as far as the tonic or the tonal center. For B flat Ionian, the tonic is B flat. For the B flat melodic minor, the tonic, the tonal center is B flat minor. 2 very different sounds. You have minor, and then you have major. And we're not looking, unless you're looking for that kind of dissonance, and this is not what I'm looking for, it won't necessarily work. So right off the bat, that tells us that, okay, to use the melodic minor scale, it would be preferable for us to resolve to have a minor resolution, either 2, 3, or 6. 2 chord, 3 chord, or 6 chord. So in this case now, we need to find the scale tones that actually go with this. Again, we can use scale tones from the melodic minor, but that would be it would be boring. It would be just like playing your major scale and just using just the major notes. Because remember, the melodic minor scale is a 7-tone scale, just like the major scale. So we can, but we shouldn't approach it as in let's just play it diatonically. We can create a way more interesting, way more colorful harmony if we took something now that went along with it for the most part, but there were some notes that were outside of that scale that created a more colorful harmony. And what would that be? Well, it just happens to be the diminished scale. The diminished scale, I'll show you really quickly. There are two modes. Every scale is going to have a scale tone that goes with it, and for every note that it has a particular mode. So all that means is, for example, the B flat major scale, it has 7 tones because it has 7 tones. Each tone is going to be a mode. A mode is just basically the inversion. So this is your first mode, the major, second, another inversion, all right, third, and so on. So we can do the same thing now with our melodic minor scale. Same thing with our diminished scale that I'm going to show you. We have just 2 modes, like I said, because the scale is symmetrical. It's an 8-tone scale. So it's symmetrical. The 8 tones are just repeat, and they don't ever resolve. So, for example, the 2 modes, the first one of the diminished scale, the way we formulate it, the system is going to be whole half, or WH. Whole half, whole half, whole half, whole half. So if we started on a B flat and we made this the tonic or the root, B flat is going to be our first step, our first note, and then we go a whole step forward. So we skip B and go to C, whole, then we skip C and go to C sharp, or D flat, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, until we, get to the entire scale. Now the second one is just the flipped, just the reversed, okay? So instead of whole half, we have half whole, all right? Now, half whole, say it slowly. So we go from B flat to a half step to B, to a whole step to D flat. So 1 and then half whole, all right? Half whole, half whole, half whole. And that's the second mode. So out of these 2 modes, if you'll notice, the first one would be this, okay? We notice that, okay, well, with the B flat, we have this here, the 1, and then we have the minor third. We also have a flatted 5th, but we don't care about that because the 5th is either going to be a raised, when we alter it or change it, we're either going to raise it and lower it, but it doesn't necessarily affect the quality of the chord. But the most important one, remember, is the third. The third gives the chord its identity. All right, so we identify this as a minor chord. So now with the minor chord now, we say, okay, well, we have some notes that match, because remember, the B flat melodic minor, we have a minor triad, or a minor sound, a minor dyad. Dyad means 2, the 2 notes. So you can either have a dyad chord or a triad chord. So now, with that in mind, we know that the first mode works very well, all right, for the minor chord, because the tonic is going to be at least minor, just like it would be with the melodic minor. We can at least use the first mode of the diminished scale to resolve to a minor chord progression, a 2, 3, or 6. So now the fun begins when we mix and we match scales. So we can take the scale, the B flat melodic minor, and match it with the diminished scale, the first mode. It just happens to have the first 2 notes here. Okay, so if we have scale tones that match, they are going to have chords that match as well. So with every scale tone, like for example, we have C, we can take notes from the C scale and match them with any other note to come up with some kind of chord or some kind of harmony. Well, the same thing works with any other scale. They work perfectly because they're part of that scale. So in other words, the first chord that we're going to have, or the dyad, the 2-note chord, which is a dyad, is going to represent the first 2-note chord in the diminished scale. So in other words, B flat melodic minor, the first chord, is the same thing as in the B flat diminished scale. However, that's not the only thing that matches, because when we look at the notes, we can see here, we have several other notes that match as well. B flat is the same thing, of course, in the 1. We have 2, 3, 4. And we stop there. Now we go to 5 for the B flat melodic minor, but we don't have that. We have E, and then we have G flat. When we continue, we have the G, A, and the B. So if we count those notes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes that match the melodic minor scale and that overlap with the B flat diminished scale. Now that we know for a fact that we have scale tones that match, we can also match chords as well. We have this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then of course back to 1 again. It being an 8-tone scale versus a 7-tone scale, we have most of the tones that match. The scale tones are almost identical. You have 6 out of 7 tones that match the diminished scale. So that grants us with many things that we can actually do instead of just sticking with one tone. And this is sort of the magic or the secret of how we can derive chords from different scales when we marry them together. This is why you have to know your scales, because if you're familiar with them, you can see which ones match and which ones don't. And it's because they don't match. It doesn't mean that every single note or most of the notes for that fact have to match as well. You can even have the first note match or the first triad or first chord match, and you can utilize the rest of them. In this case, and for this purpose, we're going to look at the diminished, because there are only a certain amount of scales you're going to remember anyway. But of course, the melodic minor being the top of your list besides your major scale and your natural minor scale. So now when we look at that, we can say, okay, we have scales tones that match. We can take the ones that do match and come up with a melodic line. And in fact, we can do movements that are counter to each other. We can have a sort of counter melody. This is all a part of the diminished scale, which is also part of the melodic minor scale. So we have the A over the E flat, the B flat over the D flat, C over C, and of course the D flat over B flat, leaving us a minor dyad, and we can harmonize this with the melodic minor, because remember, all the tone scales match. So continuing in that fashion, if we do this, we know that the second chord in the B flat diminished scale is going to be the C diminished. So what we can do and end up on a tonic. We can do this. And then we end up on the B flat melodic minor. Because if you look at these notes, remember, these notes are part of the B flat diminished scale. Again. Now, if we took that and we said these notes go, so we can do this as well. We can do this in our left hand. We can take the A and the E flat, play our E flat diminished, and we can even make it to a minor 7 chord now, if you wanted to. And being that we have a minor 7 chord, again, we can have a 2 chord, a 3 chord, or a 6 chord. There's nothing stopping you from using it from a 3 chord or a 6 chord, but I would use it like this as a 2 chord. Okay, that's a 2 chord, because in A flat, B flat minor, or B flat minor 7 is the 2 of it. You can also use it as a 3 chord or use the tones as passing. So the timing may be weird, but three, 6, 2, 5, all right? And I'm not gonna walk up like this. This is from I Do Worship John P. Key. All right, rather 6. And that's how we would use that in that sense. Even as a 6 chord now, we can take the same movement just like that. And of course, we have our D flat as our tonal center. We have B flat as the 6th, resolving as a 6 chord to a 6, 2, 5, and 1 chord resolution. Now, let's take a look at the major aspect of this now. Now, what we can do with that diminished scale, what we want to do is utilize the same concept and look for notes that match. We're looking at the melodic minor scale, and then we're looking at the diminished scale. Now we're going to take it up a half step. We're not looking at the same diminished scale. The second mode we can use for something else, but let's look at the B diminished scale. So the B diminished scale is just this, the half whole, or the second mode. So 1, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole. And then we have the E flat melodic minor, which is just like E flat. E flat major would be this. But instead of the G, we play the G flat in this place. All notes are the same except for the G, which becomes brought back a half step. And now if we look at the scale tones of the B diminished, what we have are notes that match with the E flat melodic minor. So if we look at the first note here, the B doesn't go because there's going to be a B flat. But we have every other note, just like we did before. We're going to have 6 out of 7 tones. That's almost the entire scale. This note goes, this note, this one here, this one, this one, this one, but this one doesn't, and this one doesn't. Okay, so we have this one that doesn't go, this one that doesn't go, but then we have, of course, the B flat. So what we can do, we can utilize that. Oddly enough, you say, well, B is not B flat, but we do have that in the E flat melodic minor. If we look at the scale again of E flat melodic minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th interval is major. So the first chord, of course, is minor. All right. The second chord is going to be minor. Third chord is going to be augmented. We have the fourth chord, which is major, and the 5th chord, which is major, which happens to be the tonic we're looking for, the major tonic, which is going to be B flat major. So that's what's going to bring us home. You see, the harmonies work when they overlap, but the resolution works, and we're going to take it from either one key. But in reality, they all match one another. So now, it just depends on where you're trying to go. You can make it minor, you can make it major. In this case, we picked E flat melodic minor to help us to match harmonies, but then to bring us to a resolution that's major. So I would do something like this. I would take that same chord progression, and if we look at the notes here, we'll do them quickly. We have these notes that are part of the B diminished scale. These are the chords, I should say, right? Here, that's the entire scale. So I would take that now and take my knowledge of what I know about the diminished scale. We're going to do the same chords. All right, we're sticking to it diatonically. Now we resolve, okay? We're borrowing that and taking that from melodic minor because all the other notes matches. And this is a resolution for the 5th degree, but we're still making it major. It's not E flat major, it's E flat melodic minor. And typically with that, the E flat melodic minor is going to be a stand-in to take us back to go up a 5th or down a 4th to B flat as its tonic. So I'll let you hear that. All right. Again. Something like that. That's what we would do for a turnaround to get us right back to B flat major because of the key changes in the key tonality. And it's not limited there. Again, your knowledge of scales outside of just the major scale or just the natural minor scale will take you to doing all kind of experimentation. And not things that just are way out there, just experimental, but they're actually practical. Things you hear in music you can utilize, and it will help you when you listen to music instead of saying, wow, I have to memorize these chords or learn this song for the next 7 days or 2 weeks. You can listen to something and know, wow, I hear those scale tones, or I hear what the piano player, what he or she is doing, and the notes that go along with that. I already know what the chords are. And it's all kind of creative things that you can actually do. There's a whole host of scales, but there are generally 4 scales that you need to know, and that's beyond the scope of this video. We'll talk about that another time. I hope this has been a blessing to you. And if it has, like I said, go ahead and check out gospelprogressionsuniversity.com/Gospel Keys Pro. You can download my free guide. It's called What Do Pro Musicians Know That You Don't? It'll give you a head start, a jump start on your trail to becoming a better gospel musician. God bless you, and I will see you for the next video.